heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Regular consumption of processed food is causing weight gain, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, other health problems. But even more, a new documentary argues that additives from big food are manipulating our brains. What do we need to know? What can we do? The problem of processed foods, all within the big picture of our Catholic faith. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. I'm Jim Havens. It is Wholeness and Healing Monday, fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul. With our co-host, my lovely wife, Becky Havens. She's a Catholic wife and mother with a passion and calling to educate people about the importance of caring for our bodies that the Lord has blessed us with by living a healthy lifestyle. She helps others to think outside the cultural norms and to be their own advocate while not falling into the many pressures of modern medicine. She's the author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, a 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle. Also wrote a boycott list of over 600 pro-abortion companies. You can get both of those resources for free and learn more at her website, safehavensmama.com. So again, taking up this topic today, the problem of processed foods. And as I pulled on this thread, there was a lot more there than what I expected. I think we're going to have a fascinating discussion here today. We're looking forward to getting you in on it as well. But as always, our disclaimer, we're not doctors, not scientists, just regular people looking to live well and raise our family. We believe in objective truth and asking questions when things don't make sense. And we're not giving medical advice, but we do want to offer a forum here today. We know a thing or two, but there's still a ton we don't know. We have some personal experiences, as do you. And again, we would love to hear from you throughout the show today. We're going to put the number to call in out there in just a minute. We hope that you would call in with any question or comment as you see fit. But Becky, why are you interested in this topic to begin with, the problem of processed foods?
Sure. I just feel like it's something that we probably all struggle with. It's very convenient and cheap to live off of processed foods. I think most of us probably went through seasons in our lives where that's all we were buying. It was quick and easy, depending on our jobs or our state in life. And you didn't really think twice about it. At least that was my experience. And especially when you're younger, you feel like you can eat, whatever you want, and you're not going to have any sort of effects. And for a lot of people, you don't until you start to get older, or you start to be, you're struggling with health issues or something along those lines. And then you kind of realize, all right, what's making me sick? What's happening in my body? And it almost always comes back to food or diet. And if you go to the grocery store, almost everything in the grocery store is processed. If you walk the perimeter of the grocery store, that's where you're going to find your fruits and veggies, your meat, your eggs. But if you go down the aisles, almost everything's in a box or a can. And so a grocery store is mainly made up of aisles. And so you get in the aisles, in and out, and everything is processed. And so probably the majority of Americans are just spending all of their money on processed food, myself included. I mean, processed food is a large portion of what's in the store. So likely most of us are going to have some of that. And I think there's a difference, and we can go into that a little bit more and what to really avoid. But the fact that those are our options is sad and scary. We've gotten away from the natural type of foods, the farmers markets, though that's around too. And the convenience of the grocery stores where things are coming in from all over. We don't know who's packaging them. We don't know what's in them. We don't always read the labels. And so we just kind of feed them to ourselves and our kids because it's quick and easy. And it might say something like the greenwashed message on there that, oh, this is healthy. It has all your vitamins and minerals, and it's actually packed with complete junk. So once you start learning more about that, you realize like, okay, we need to do better. And yes, it takes more time to make your own food, and it takes more time to go through the grocery store, the outside of it, and just kind of get the necessities. But in the end, there are so many connections to disease and what you're eating that it's completely worth it to make that change.
Yeah, I found this recent article at fastcompany.com on this new documentary film. I guess that's out now in theaters, and also I guess you can find it and purchase it on streaming services and watch it. Maybe remember the original Food Inc. Well, this is Food Inc. 2. And it argues that additives from big food are manipulating our brains. The film covers several troubling topics, says the article. It spends a significant chunk of its runtime on ultra-processed foods and how the additives within them are rewiring customers' metabolisms. So we're going to get into this a little bit, but first, just the distinction here between processed foods and ultra-processed foods. I think when we're saying processed foods, what we're really talking about are ultra-processed foods when we look at the terms that are given to us by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So this is according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They say regular processed foods are those in which the nature of an agricultural product has been adjusted either through heating, freezing, juicing, or many other alterations that are not inherently unhealthy. Meanwhile, ultra-processed foods, which have been getting a lot of bad press lately, are those that are so thoroughly divorced from the real foods that go into them and riddled with unpronounceable additives, consumers might never guess what those foods were. A more succinct way to explain the distinction, as relayed in Food Inc. 2, is that corn on the cob is unprocessed, canned corn is processed, and corn chips are ultra processed. So again, I think we're mostly talking about ultra processed foods when we're saying processed foods. It goes on to say here that on their own, the occasional hot dog, French fry, or Cheeto shouldn't be too concerning for health conscious eaters. However, Americans on average consume ultra processed foods for 58% of their total energy intake, compared to 17% in Italy. That's a lot of chips and Oreos. The problem, though, stretches far beyond the many ultra-processed foods that are straightforwardly not healthy, the filmmakers argue. Where things get truly murky is in the ultra-processed foods that use additives to trick your brain into believing that it's tasting something that it isn't and messing with its natural ability to sense nutrients. Again, we'll get more into this in a bit, but Becky, any thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, as you start to learn more about it and dig deeper, it really starts to make you think like, all right, we need to redo. And we generally try to eat pretty healthy, but with the kids in and out of the house, it's easy just to buy the things, even if they're labeled like organic or natural. It's still not ideal. So there's a great website called foodbabe.com. It's a woman who started this many years ago, and she has her own company now, but she has an awesome website. It's foodbabe.com. And in the website, there's a section called ingredients to avoid in processed foods, and it goes through all of these ingredients. And all you have to do is start reading through, and I feel like that would start to motivate you. So let me just give you an example, because of this is exactly what you're just talking about. The ingredient BHT, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but it's a synthetic preservative. And if you look like on cereal boxes, I've definitely seen this ingredient in chips and processed foods. BHT is the ingredient, and she goes through, she'll say what it is, why to avoid it, and what it's found in. And so this one is why to avoid. It's shown to affect the signaling from our gut to brain, which tells us to stop eating, which could contribute to overeating and obesity. It's an endocrine disruptor, which is also linked to cancer in some animal studies. And the EWG includes BHT on their Dirty Dozen list of food additives to avoid. So just to know that there are ingredients out there that are trying to rewire your brain or your natural ability to know when you've had enough or to stop eating, that's a problem. And where are they putting that? They're putting that in chips and cereal. And that's like the main thing geared at kids' lunches and snacks. And no wonder there's an issue with obesity in our country,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. When we're about to have a break in a couple minutes, and when we come back in the next segment, we'll go a layer deeper into this and what's taking place what the effects are to our brain from these ultra-processed foods, these food additives, and what the buttered popcorn jelly bean has to do with it all. That's going to be interesting. But I want to also make a couple of comments on, I know sometimes people might question, why are you guys talking about this stuff on Catholic radio? Can't we just talk about the faith? And look, we here on The Simple Truth, we're talking about the faith all the time. We love the Catholic faith, and Tuesday through Friday, tune in. That is totally what we're diving into here. We're diving into the faith here and there as we go, but we are leading with problems that affect our bodies and our minds, which also then affect our souls and our spiritual life. This is a gap that I think we're not paying enough attention to if we're serious about the spiritual life. Our bodies are a big part of that. Our minds are a big part of that, obviously, right? So we are a unity of body and soul. This is what a human being is. If we're only just focusing on just the catechesis, right, and receiving the faith and living the faith, yes, that's number one. But how well are we going to do that if we're completely drained because we're not getting enough sleep, or we don't understand how to optimize our sleep, if we don't understand how to eat well and have good diets, if we're putting all of this junk into our bodies, especially if God is calling us to keep advancing into greater things, which is what he is doing. As God is calling us to stretch more and more in our lives, to more fully live out the virtue of charity, to really love God for his own sake and love our neighbor out of love of God. As we're asked to do more, as he calls upon us to do more, we're going to need more physically and mentally. And yes, God's grace, receiving his grace in the sacraments, yes, number one, all of these things vitally important. But so is our diet. So is what we are doing with our bodies, what things are affecting our minds and the health of our mind, the health of our body, and the health of our soul. It is all of a piece, which is the human person. So that is the importance of these Wholeness and Healing Monday shows that Becky and I are trying to bring forward here. If you want to call in any question or comment, 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network presents Saints and Seasons. On April 15th, we celebrate the feast of Saint César de Bus, Confessor. César was born in southern France in the year of our Lord 1544. He was a pious boy, and at the age of 18 he joined the army of the king to fight against the Huguenots, the French Reformed Protestants. After the First War, he tried his hand at the arts, but was eager to rejoin the military when fighting broke out again. César fell seriously ill, however, and was unable to serve. He spent 3 years in Paris, where his hitherto virtuous life took a turn for the worldly, and upon returning to his hometown, César managed to obtain his late brother's ecclesiastical office, purely for mercenary reasons. After an image of Our Lady reminded him of a friend's prayers for his salvation, César's faith returned, and he earnestly took up his studies for the priesthood. Inspired by St. Charles Borromeo, César was drawn to charitable works and preaching, and in 1592 he founded the Congregation of Christian Doctrine, or the Doctrinaries, for the purpose of preaching and catechizing. César died in the year of our Lord 1607 and is considered a patron of catechists. Also honored on this day are St. Basilissa and Anastasia, disciples of Saints Peter and Paul, St. Roden, one of the 12 apostles of Ireland, St. Hannah, the holy washerwoman, and many other martyrs, confessors, and holy virgins. For more about the Saints and Seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints and seasons.
At the Station of the Cross, we understand that life circumstances can affect your giving options, whether by moving or by switching banks and credit card numbers. Please let us know if recent changes have been made to your payment information so that we can better serve you as you continue to bless us with your financial support. Update your information today at thestationofthecross.com or by calling 1-877-888-6279, extension 104.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here talking about the problem with processed foods today, and a lot more to this than you might initially think. Going back to that article that we were talking about in that first segment, It says here that many of the food industry's problems can perhaps be summed up by the humble buttered popcorn jelly bean. So first, Becky, the humble buttered popcorn jelly bean, what do you think? Do you love or do you hate the buttered popcorn jelly bean?
I would never eat that. I love buttered popcorn in general. And I will admit I do get the buttered popcorn if I go to the movie theater, which is like once a year. So I think that's okay. But never in my life would I ever eat that. I think that's disgusting.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, and I don't think you're much younger than me, but when this came out, so they say here 1989 is when it was introduced. And I remember sometime probably around that time, not long after being a kid, probably in middle school. And somebody giving me one of these, and it was incredible that this really tasted like buttered popcorn. I remember that was the fascinating thing about it, that everybody was amazed. And so people would pass this thing around. You got to try this. Have you ever had that buttered popcorn jelly bean? Well, it says here, love or hate this sweet treat. Its 1989 introduction was a chewy harbinger of food scientists' ability to make any food taste like any other food. If a sugary candy could send savory signals to the brain, what else was possible? A lot, it turns out. Flavor technology has evolved rapidly in recent years. Forget about candy that smacks of toasty popcorn. Lab-grown meat is now practically indistinguishable from the real thing. Now, I don't know. I've not encountered, I don't think, this lab-grown meat that would be indistinguishable from the real thing. If you've had this lab-grown meat and it tasted exactly like regular meat, call us up, let us know. I'd love to hear about the experience. Again, unless I'm being tricked somewhere and it really is indistinguishable and I ate it thinking it was real. I've not yet encountered this, but you can give us a call, any experience you've had on this. If you have, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. But it says as much as advances in bioengineering, I mean, this is considering that an advance. I would not consider that necessarily an advance, and has leveled up the veggie burger beyond belief, it says, among myriad other breakthroughs. They've also let loose a deluge of so-called health foods that might not be so healthy in the long run. And this one food journalist who worked on this movie says this was never a problem historically. And this guy, he wrote a couple books, one called The Dorito Effect, the other called The End of Craving. This is his main area of interest, I guess, in sensory aspects of food. And so he unpacks that in these books. But he says here that 200 years ago, if something tasted sweet, it had sugar. And this was a reliable indication of simple carbohydrate calories. But now there's just an arsenal of additives, artificial and so-called natural flavors, fat replacers, and non-nutritive sweeteners. And this isn't what the brain was designed for. It's food that tells a lie. And it has an effect. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, so that is so funny because almost everything, in processed food is made up of natural flavors, artificial flavors, monosodium glutamate, which is MSG. And when you look up on this website I was talking about earlier, so you look up monosodium glutamate, MSG, it's an artificial flavor enhancer, and it's purely used to increase food cravings and irresistibility. So you eat more than you should. The problem is it's linked to headaches, obesity, depression, and mental disorders. It's also called an excitotoxin because it excites brain cells to death, which is associated with neurodegenerative diseases, and kind of goes on from there. But it's in frozen meals, chips, dressings, soups, rice, pasta mixes, so many different things. And it literally is getting people to eat more and causing them serious illness. And I just find it so crazy that this is allowed in our food system, that there's no regulation here, that the FDA is saying okay to these things. And if you look over to Europe, there's the European Union, who they have a lot of laws and regulations on ingredients like this. And there are things that they do not allow in their foods over there that they allow here. And so you could even see different labels. You can see the American label and then the European label. Like for something like a cereal, or this website also contains that. She goes through all these things, and she has one that's about M&Ms, and it will tell you that they use more natural colors than America. They use all lake dyes and artificial colors, and just the different ingredients in the different areas is really interesting, that America just doesn't seem to regulate any food,
Yeah, we're being manipulated, which shouldn't be too surprising, but maybe you've just never linked that up with food before. I mean, what were we talking about last week with social media, how these social media companies, right, for the sake of profit, they're trying to basically hook you in and then keep you on their system for as long as possible by everything that they do to try to basically trick your brain into these sort of sensations of pleasure, give you some dopamine hits and just keep you scrolling and keep you locked in here, and you're getting likes and you're liking the likes and all of this stuff that's going on to just try to basically steal your attention to drive up their own profits. This is how these corporations are running. It's about profits, and sadly, there should be some ethics, there should be some morals in those who are running these corporations to say, yes, we're here to make some profit, of course, but we're not going to do it at the expense of hurting the person that is using this product or buying this product. In this case, it seems they don't care. It seems like everybody wants to go after the historical example of the cigarette companies, the tobacco companies, big tobacco, and say, look at these guys. They knew they were doing the wrong thing. They kept doing it. Well, pretty much everything's that way, right? Big food here is no different. They know this stuff is not good, that it's hurting people. Maybe they don't, the whistle hasn't been blown to the full extent at this point, but we know enough to know that this stuff isn't good. This is not of value. This is hurting the health of real people, and it's driving up medical costs and the whole mess that is the health. The health insurance industry and everything that is going on with these obesity epidemics and all kinds of nonsense, diabetes, everything in our country that can go back to this as a big part of the cause, instead of fixing the root of it, which these companies could do, or the government could say, hey, we're going to have to step in here on the good of the people, because you guys don't care about them. You're just looking to exploit them for your own profits. Instead, this is what's happening. So look, we got to bring this information forward for one another so we can see it and make smart decisions, because psychologically, what is the effect on this as well? We're being bombarded also with the messaging, the commercials, the advertising. We see certain brands and certain labels, and we have a certain psychological effect, right? There's a certain feeling you might get when you see a Nestle candy bar, right? There's a certain feeling you might have just seeing the label, because that's something that maybe has some association to your childhood, or you've eaten it and you've had that hit of pleasure. And now when you just see it, when you just even hear the name or see the label. So we have to be aware of all of this, run it through our intellects and say, but this actually isn't good. Again, maybe once in a great while, very scarcely, I can enjoy something like this in my diet, but I'm going to be wise about it. I'm certainly going to be temperate here, and I'm going to avoid this stuff by and large. It does say here in this article that the directors of this film we're talking about, too, Food Inc. 2, they make the case that companies seldom voluntarily correct an unhealthy aspect of their product if the solution might interfere with their profits. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think most of the time, when you see a change, like I think at one point, Hershey offered a simple Hershey bar with minimal ingredients, and it's because they wanted to be in the competition of the natural chocolate bars that were coming out at the time. It started to get bigger, organic chocolate, dark chocolate, and they saw a profit in there. That's the only reason they did it. They didn't think like, oh, well, the other stuff is junk. We want to help people to be healthier. No, they thought we need to compete in this space. And that's all that it is. It's, look, we're making money off of this. Bags of chips fly off the shelf, and that works for us. And then it works for the other guys too, because, disease is on the rise, and now they can get just about any kind of medication for any kind of disease, and they can manage it that way. They don't have to actually get outside and exercise. They can just take a pill. And so it kind of works for everybody. So the people who control all of this, they're working together, it seems. And usually the only time that laws are getting passed, and a lot of times it'll happen like in California, it's because there are people, advocates, who are pushing for more, stricter regulations, whether it's like in the food or if it's in, health and beauty, because all of this is just a free for all. It is just completely unregulated in all of those areas. And we're just like the guinea pigs. We're just kind of like taking it all in and just like using it because that's what's at the store. And if you start, looking into it, yes, it starts to cost more money, and it takes a little bit more time to live a more natural way. But in the end, it's going to keep you off of those medications. It's going to keep you healthier. It's going to keep you feeling better. And it goes in line with our faith, like we're not feeling like we're addicted to these foods and we can't stop eating, but it allows us the freedom that we don't care. We're detached. We can, fast from food. It's not a big deal without like these things getting into the food where it makes it like an addiction and it makes it harder to give up. So, in my mind, it's all connected there.
Yeah. And, to bring reason into this and say, okay, what would be a right public policy position on this? And I'd have to think more about it to really consider it, have a really a big conclusion I can really stand behind. But just off a first glance of this and thinking about public policy, I know what I would not want to do. And that is what I think New York City tried some years ago, where they said, well, we're just going to ban the big gulp and you can't get any sodas above a certain size and all of this. I think that's kind of silly, actually, treating people like they're children. What about just giving people the information so they know and letting them be able to decide? How about some clear labeling so people understand what's actually in the thing, rather than trying to allowing the companies to hide it as easily as they are? What about possibly even looking at various additives and saying, you know what, this additive actually is something that is inherently harmful here. It's not working in a way that is for our good. Let's just ban the additive itself. And that would have an effect on a lot of different foods for sure. Maybe people would be upset about that. I don't know. But things should be looked at here. And I think at a basic level, we should all maybe be able to agree, at least get the information out there clearly for people to be able to judge for themselves and know what it is that they're actually eating. Because I think mostly we're eating these ultra processed foods and just thinking like, yeah, I know these things are kind of like junk food, but not understanding the nature of the additives, not understanding what's really happening to our brain, how we're being tricked at the level of our brains, and the addictive quality to these things as much as we could if this information was talked about a little bit more. So that's what we're trying to do here today. If you have any question or comment, we'd love to hear you. 1-877-511-5483, 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. Pope Francis addressed the treatment of disabled persons last week at the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. Francis criticized barriers that make exiles of the disabled, forcing them to the margins of social life in education, economy, and cultural life. He noted that Jesus changes the meaning of human experience for all, and in a particular way among lives marked with grave limitations. Comedian commentator Bill Maher says pro-life people are kind of right that abortion is murder, while Maher uses the myth of overpopulation to accept such abortion. He blasts the political idea that abortion can be right in some states and not in others. German Cardinal Gerhard Müller recently called abortion too much of a soft word and suggested using the term infanticide. The Archbishop's suggestion might help clarify the pro-life position. This is Life News Radio. A culture of life has a rarely mentioned but very formidable enemy. Pornography is material that deceives its consumers into thinking that they possess beauty, while the reality is they are possessed by a lie. The first step may be to talk openly with your pastor or confessor. Reject the lie and recognize that a culture of life relies upon you. In other stories, a Canadian man was abandoned to a stretcher in an ER for 4 days with his body irreversibly broken by bed sores. He was offered and last week accepted medical aid in dying. And abortion-friendly Kansas Governor Laura Kelly has vetoed a bill aimed to ensure women are not forced into abortion. And late last week, Idaho filed a U.S. Supreme Court brief to counter White House claims that a 40-year-old federal law requires abortions, not merely emergency room care for the indigent. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here. We're talking about the problem of processed foods today and the survey that we sent out this morning. If you're not on that email list, by the way, to get that morning survey every Monday, you can get on that email list by going to thestationofthecross.com/TST, and that'll get you to the Simple Truth page, and you can put your email address in there, and then you'll get this Monday morning email survey where we ask you, and this is another way that you can participate in the show. If you don't want to call in, we're going to get to as many email responses as we can. And we asked today about why do you think processed foods are so popular? And this is one response we got. This is Katerina in Newton, Massachusetts. She says, people are too lazy to cook, too busy to cook. My mom used to cook every day, and I am now doing the same. I know what I put in my food. And this goes along with some other research I found that says this: opt for whole foods whenever possible, such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. These provide essential nutrients without the added sugars, unhealthy fats, and sodium often found in processed foods. Cooking meals at home using fresh ingredients allows you to control what goes into your food. It can help you avoid processed options. Additionally, choosing minimally processed foods like frozen fruits and vegetables or plain yogurt can be convenient alternatives with fewer additives. Becky, your thoughts on this? And in particular, I wonder, people, if we're so addicted to the sensory, the exciting sensory experience, I guess, of what this is doing to our brains and eating all these additives and all of these ultra processed foods, it's breaking away from them. I mean, there's going to be withdrawal. There's going to be still a psychological sort of dependency of wanting to go back to these things, a strong pull back. Eating whole foods and eating good foods like this, like it's being talked about here, is going to maybe seem kind of boring. It's not going to be easy. Your thoughts, Becky?
Yeah, I think that once you're kind of trying to come away from foods like that, you'll definitely have some detox reactions. We've done diets like that, or we've pulled things like that and just stuck to simple foods at different times. And you can definitely feel it, which is kind of scary because you realize what those foods were doing to you and the effect that they had on you. And then when, after a certain amount of time goes by, you can see, my body feels way better now. And it probably starts to bring some sort of resolve to a lot of the health issues that people are going through. And yeah, I would just say that it's best to eat as simply as you can. It doesn't have to be boring. If we're so used to just having, so much pleasure when it comes to food and super fancy. We have fruits from all over the world that come to America, you know what I mean? But that's not even what actually grows here. And so you take for granted just the simple fruits. And because then you get, cakes and sugary candies and things like that. That's more what you want. And then your body starts to crave that. But your body, can be rewired. And I think that when you start to eat simply and you see that you start to feel better, it can be the motivator that you need in order to get back on track. But even things like using, herbs and different spices can make things just as delicious. The problem is like when you buy processed foods, they can put ingredient lists on there, but how do you really know that that's what's in it? You actually don't. There's always recalls. There's always things getting left behind, like a metal scrap, or this was I don't know, a lot like laced with dairy or peanuts, or there is a risk when it comes to eating processed foods. And so it's much easier when you make it yourself. You know exactly what's going in it, and it actually tastes really good too. It doesn't make you feel horrible. So it's just a mindset and a habit thing. It takes more time for sure, and so that's the difficulty. Like most families are on the go, and kids are out the door going to school. You're just making them sandwiches and pop a few bags of chips and Little Debbie's, and you're good to go. And it's not going to serve them in that way at all. So even if you're going to, have a treat, just make the cookies yourself. At least you know what's in them. So it doesn't mean you have to stop eating the things you necessarily like, but find a healthier alternative. Find the flour that's non-GMO and it's not like laced with all the pesticides. Use more organic ingredients. You will benefit from it because it just has less pesticides, and they don't do as much to it. They don't like denature the original sugar cane the way they do with like white processed sugar. So there's ways to make delicious food when you make it yourself. You just got to plan a little bit more, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also interesting that as we've been doing these shows, these Monday wholeness and healing episodes now for a while, and we've had requests to talk about, to look into, and discuss various different diets. I remember the carnivore diet was a popular one that was asked about. We talked about that. We went into that. The vegan and vegetarian. Another was gluten-free. And as we research these things, I mean, there's pros and cons to all of them to varying degrees. But one thing that we see in all of them is that basically all of these diets, one reason that they all kind of work in where you're seeing where they are working, one reason why they're all working so well where they are is because they cut out all the processed foods. And that is going to be like the number one healthiest thing you can do for yourself in your diet, just cutting out these ultra processed foods. We have Gabriel in Carrollton, Texas, who chimed in saying carbohydrates and sugar are highly addictive, cheap, and easily accessible. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, he says. And then he also asks, have you read about Ellen White, John Harvey Kellogg, the Rockefellers, Bill Gates, the World Economic Forum, and their promotion of vegetarian and vegan diets to destroy the health and fertility of the world in order to depopulate the world and make us docile and easily controllable? And that was what he was wanting to know more about, the vegetarian and vegan agenda with respect to depopulation. So Becky, I'll throw that at you in a moment, but first I'll just say, well, I'm certainly aware of these enthusiasts, these eugenicists, basically, who want to depopulate the world off of false science regarding how things work, and that saying we're overpopulated when actually most of these areas around the world that they're saying are overpopulated are actually, at this point, the numbers are going the other direction. They're in need of higher populations. We're having a depopulation already taking place around the world. There's various factors to that, certainly abortion, abortifacients, contraception, these types of things. But are they actively trying to speed this up in various ways, other ways as well, like trying to maybe do a vegetarian vegan? I've not heard that one. All right. I've not heard the vegetarian vegan agenda tied into this as a way to destroy people's health and fertility. I do think that there are many high powered people that do want to destroy our health and fertility because they do have this depopulation agenda ideology that is deep within them and really just they're foundational to their worldview. So I do think that is true. But yeah, don't know about this particular aspect of a vegetarian vegan agenda. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe, wasn't that in one of the, like the New Green Deal or something? It was cows were causing like excessive carbon dioxide or something crazy like that. And so it was like AOC trying to remove cows from farms and take over the control of farmers. And so he's right. There is something going on with that. It's ridiculous because, look, if you're going to be vegan or vegetarian, then be vegan or vegetarian in the way that it's intended to be. You don't need to be eating Impossible burgers and all the processed junk that they sell at the store catering to vegans and vegetarians. Just eat what's in nature itself, and do your thing. But if you're going to like remove animals from farms, I would say good luck, because I believe that it's part of our ecosystem. I think it's part of like how we survive. God made that for us. I don't think you can just eliminate animals and we're going to be good to go. I feel like it's a pretty big part. Even when, they talk about like the bees are endangered and everything will collapse if the bees are gone. And those are bees, you know what I mean? So imagine what's going to happen if you just start getting rid of all the animals. It's ridiculous. I don't know the agenda behind it. I think it's just more control. They just want to be able to like feed you what they want to feed you. I can't imagine these people like Bill Gates and all them are vegans. I'm assuming they probably like steak. So I don't think it probably goes both ways for them. Most people like a good steak. So, I'm not buying the whole thing, but yeah.
Yeah. They do kind of look vegan in a way, if I can say that there's a certain look. Not that there are athletes as well that are vegan and vegetarian. So this doesn't go for everybody, but I would say Bill Gates doesn't look like he's eating a lot of meat, if I can just say it from the look of them. But I don't know. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, I certainly do know about the Green New Deal and about the trying to get rid of the cows and all of that. My sense on that was that, they were kind of straightforward, just saying they really actually believe that that's going to help with respect to the climate change hysteria that they're wrapped up in. And so that's why they're doing that. That's why they're calling for that. But could it be that their secret agenda is they're really calling for that because they want to get rid of meat to make people weaker and depopulate? And that also ties in with their agenda because, again, more people in their minds means it's bad for the environment, even though, guess what? The environment exists for people, right? God created the world and it was good and it is good. And then he creates man to live in the world and to be the dominant force in the world, right? And this is all supposed to work together for good. We're not supposed to be, they think of us kind of like as parasites on this beautiful world. Actually, it all works together in a complementary way. We actually are good for the earth, and the earth is good for us, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, do people exploit it in doing things the wrong way? Of course, that needs to be amended. The problem, though, is not to get rid of all the people, but in their minds, this is how they think of it. So they need certainly some deep conversion and some much better formation to understand what it is that is what's really going on, what reality actually is. But yeah, could that all be tied in together? I suppose so. Becky, what else would you like to share with us today?
Let's see. Going through my notes. I mean, honestly, I think the best part about the whole thing is just starting to learn. Now, there's like a lot of different movies out there. I know you mentioned a few of them, like Food Inc., and there's a second one. There are a few more, and some of them are pushing like, being a vegan or removing all meats in general. But I think it's our obligation to dig deep into those areas and to see like, why are we putting this into our bodies? What's the benefit for us? Is it because it's easy, because it's convenient? Is it going to be good for our children? I mean, literally, as you go through, like I mentioned earlier, the grocery store and see all of the different available items that you can get. Like they have waffles that are like unicorn waffles now. Like everything in the grocery store is catered to like what's popular now and what's easy for the mom, throw in some waffles for breakfast, but like that's like your main meal of the day. You need that energy. Just taking another look at what do we really need to be putting into our bodies to feed them and nourish them, and realizing like we can do this. This is not very difficult. Even a homemade bowl of oatmeal with just some real butter and maple syrup can be way more beneficial than the packs. So just spending a little bit more time seeing where you are at with this whole thing, and seeing how you can make a difference in your own family.
Yeah, and when we get back to, we'll say what one nutritionist says: toss out these 6 popular ultra-processed foods now. Where can you start? Also, cost-effective ways to avoid processed foods when we come back. Stay tuned.
Have you ever dialogued with someone who espouses relativism, which says there is no truth, or it might be true for you, but not for me? It's pretty frustrating. Deep down, we know these claims are false, but we often don't know why. Here's the reason. To say there is no truth is a contradiction. The assertion is tantamount to saying it's true that there is no truth. Plain absurdity. Now, the other position, there is no absolute truth, just truth relative to the individual set of beliefs, is problematic as well. The usage of the verb is implies an assertion about the objective order of things. It's the same thing as saying it's absolutely true that there is no absolute truth, which of course is a contradiction. No matter how the relativist slices the pie, he ends up with a contradiction, making relativism an unreasonable worldview. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Hi, Joe McLean here, host of A Catholic Take, heard on the Station of the Cross each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. A bold synthesis of information and inspiration, keeping you up to date on the news and issues that you may have missed from a courageous Catholic perspective. That's A Catholic Take, weekday morning, 7 a.m. right here on the Station of the Cross and the free iCatholic Radio mobile app. Download it today. God love you.
Download the app to take our programming with you wherever you go. Hear what listeners are saying about the regularly updated iCatholic Radio app.
The programs on iCatholic Radio are uplifting, educational, and have served to deepen my faith as a Catholic. Thank you for this amazing station.
Download the free iCatholic Radio app in your Android or Apple store today. If you already have the app, please consider giving us a 5-star review or telling a friend about it.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here. The problem with processed foods. If you have any question or comment for us, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Becky, I'm looking at an article here, recent article, where there's a nutritionist saying to toss out these 6 popular ultra-processed foods now. So maybe this is a place to start for people if they're throwing stuff out of the diet and they don't want to go cold turkey, but they want to get started in the right direction. This nutritionist says, number 1, sugary breakfast cereal. Get rid of it. Number 2, deli meats. Cut those out. Number 3, chips. Number 4, processed cheese slices. Number 5, soda. And number 6, pre-packaged pastries. So maybe that's a place to start. Becky, what do you think of that list? Anything you'd want to add, or any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's a way to do it too. You can even go like by ingredients and just say like, a lot of the diets will say, all right, we're going to start with just eliminating these different things. And you eliminate white sugar. You eliminate gluten, especially like processed gluten. Maybe you can add in whole wheat or organic whole wheat, something like that. But you're going to eliminate white flour. And when you eliminate white flour, you're already eliminating like all the pastries and the muffins and the cakes and things that you would buy at the grocery store, or if you're out in a restaurant, you're just getting your meal without the bread or the bun or something like that. And you can eliminate, preservatives. So if you're shopping for your family and there's preservatives in there that, are toxic, like I mentioned before, the BHA or the BHT, don't buy things with that. That's pretty much going to show you that item needs strong preservatives in there in order to last on the shelf, because it kind of just sits, and to keep it like crunchy, and that's why it's in there. Otherwise, like, it wouldn't need to be in there. And so you can either also remove like ultra pasteurized dairy. Some people have a really hard time with digesting ultra pasteurized dairy. And so sometimes that's easier, just to take like 3 or 4 actual foods and start with that. And then you can go deeper into maybe making that list a little bit more individualized, and saying, okay, I'm no longer going to buy, this sugary drink from the coffee shop or something like that. And I feel like once you start doing that, and you start replacing, like, instead of a handful of chips, just get like a handful of nuts. Just always have, like, we have like a big bag of cashews. Like, if the kids are hungry, just go grab a handful of nuts. I mean, that is going to be way better for their bodies than the chips that they're always asking for, or they're always looking for. Now, I still do buy stuff like that, and it'll come out on occasion, but it's usually gone within a day. Like, the bag stays out, and just like hands are reaching in like all day long, and it has not been put away. But the best way is, like, if the kids are hungry, which is constantly, go cut up an apple and have, some almond butter with it. There are ways to eat really simple like that without having to get, the bags of chips and the protein bars. And although there's some good protein bars, and some good, because sometimes you need different things to take with you, but like nut mixes are really good with that. Just stick to simple. And I feel like whenever people start doing this, they start feeling better. They start shedding weight. Their inflammation goes down, because you're literally putting toxic chemicals into your body from all of these processed ingredients that are in these foods. And again, check out that website, foodbabe.com, and then go to the ingredients to avoid in processed food. Let me just read this one, because I was reading this earlier and I just feel like this is crazy. So when it comes to artificial food dyes, that's like in almost everything. There are natural, more places are coming out with more natural colorings, which is good, but it goes on to say, okay, blue one is the ingredient. It's an artificial blue dye derived from petroleum. Why should we avoid this? And it says, this is one of the worst artificial colors because it has been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier. According to a testimony at an FDA committee meeting, the FDA asked doctors to stop adding blue number 1 to tube feedings because patients were dying not from their disease, but from the blue number 1, which apparently caused refractory hypertension and metabolic acidosis, and also incidentally turned their colons bright blue. This dye is also linked to hyperactivity and an increased risk of kidney tumors. Some research suggests it's a potential neurotoxin. It can disrupt the immune system. The molecules of the synthetic colorants are small, and the immune system finds it difficult to defend the body against them, and goes so on and so forth. And it's in so many different things. Even if it doesn't look blue, it can definitely still be in there. So that's a really big one, is like avoid the food coloring, because there are so many dangerous effects to this that we don't even realize, and we're just putting it in our bodies. And then once we remove it, so you can say like you remove that from your kids, and then all of a sudden they have it one day and they act crazy. Well, that's probably why, because their body's not used to that. Whereas some kids, they can eat that stuff and there's no reaction whatsoever, because their body's so used to it and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. There's no extreme reaction. That's how you can kind of tell, like, if you're starting to clean up your diet, you'll start reacting more to things. And that's a good thing, because there was something in there that wasn't natural to your body. So I think those are some good places to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does make sense as well that when you're feeling like junk because of these ultra processed foods in your diet, look, that's going to make it harder to make good decisions, make virtuous choices, to do God's will that he has before you. If you're feeling super tired because of these ultra processed foods in your diet, a lot harder to keep going and do God's holy will throughout the day, especially to do it with authentic charity, really out of love of God and love for your neighbor, and to do it with good energy, and to just keep going strong, and to live the way that God has made you to live. So these things are really, I would say, in a certain sense, they're contrary to the life that God has for us. Again, in temperance, sparingly, sure, but this is an area that we do need to be aware of, and if we're not consciously really taking effort to not be eating these things, very likely we're going to be pulled into the tide of the advertisements and the pull of these things being around, and without even thinking, we're going to be consuming them and then having those negative effects in our lives. So it makes sense to really think this through, and to really have this information as part of our intellectual formation as we go about the day, and what we are going to consume and what we're not going to consume. Some cost-effective ways to avoid processed foods. I found this. It says that shopping smartly and planning meals can help you avoid processed foods cost effectively. So buy seasonal fruits and vegetables, as they tend to be cheaper and fresher. Opt for whole grains like oats, brown rice, and quinoa, which are often available in bulk and are more affordable than processed alternatives. Purchase lean cuts of meat in larger quantities and freeze portions for later use. Utilize canned beans and legumes as inexpensive sources of protein. Additionally, consider buying store brand products, comparing prices between different stores, and using coupons and discounts to save money on healthier, less processed options. Becky, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, those are all really good. There's also something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. These are lists available on ewg.org. They can just help you understand which products to buy organic, because you don't have to buy everything organic, but when you do it, you're going to get less pesticides, and it's just a good start on where to go with produce and stuff like that. And just go slow with it. It can be really overwhelming if you're just used to processed food, and just maybe take a few days a week and be like, I'm going to make meals this day, and maybe prep them, and then you have meals for the next few days, and just see how it goes, because it can be super overwhelming to change over everything very quickly, but slowly you get in the habit of it, and it gets a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. And Becky's website, again, safehavensmama.com, safehavensmama.com. You can get those resources, that toxin-free in 12 months, 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle, as well as the boycott list of over 600 pro-abortion companies, safehavensmama.com. Becky, always appreciate you being here with us on Mondays and sharing your wisdom and your good advice for us. We thank you very much. God bless you all.
My name is Nathan Wickfield, Executive Director of the St. Thomas